I know we're getting started a little bit late here. Our executive session went along. The committee is ready. Lorene, are you ready? Yes. Christian, are you ready? Okay, great. All right, welcome everyone. It is January 14th, 2014. It is the North Kingstown School Committee work session here tonight. In a moment, we are going to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. And before we sit down tonight, we are going to remember John Hazard Jr., a student from North Kingstown who unfortunately passed away over the weekend. So we're going to take a moment of silence for John Hazard Jr. All right. So with that, if we could everyone stand and say the Pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, as I said, if we could just remain standing and take a short moment of silence, please. Thank you, everyone. Green, if you could please call the roll.
Kimberly Page.
Here.
Larry Cerisi.
Here.
Linda Avanzano.
Here.
John Biscardin. Cheryl Clarkin.
Here.
Robert Jones.
Here.
William Mudge.
Here.
Julia Held. Thank you.
So we are all sorry for John. He has pneumonia and unfortunately is not able to be here tonight, so we send him, remember to send him our well wishes via email, however. Lorraine, could you call the calendars next?
January 15th, wellness meeting, 3:30 p.m., Central Administration Building. January 15th, also facility subcommittee meeting, 5 p.m., Central Administration Building. January 20th, Martin Luther King Day, all schools and offices closed. January 21st, school committee budget meeting, 7 p.m., North Kingstown High School. January 27th, Professional Development Day, no school for students. January 28th, school committee business meeting, 7 p.m., North Kingstown High School. Thank you.
All right. Our next item we have on the agenda is presentations. And what we're going to do is we're going to have the CLAC presentation, and then Mr. Booth will have to be the person who waits, because after that I know there are a number of people here tonight who would like to talk about the contract, the teacher's contract. And so after the CLAC presentation, we'll bring that up and take that for a vote, and then we'll go on with the rest of our agenda. So, CLAC.
Is it on? It's on.
It is, and you can put it down if it's easier for you.
Thank you for having us. We as a committee are here to introduce the concept of a leadership team for the North Kingstown Special Education Local Advisory Committee, better known as CLAC, in lieu of the traditional governance of chair, co-chair, treasurer, etc. We respectfully request school committee approval sanctioning the change in the bylaws to support the move in that direction. We will submit a formal request in writing for your consideration.
Yeah, if you submit that request to the clerk of the committee, we could certainly place that item on our next agenda for discussion and approval.
Thank you. We are also requesting rotating representation of the school committee to foster a more open collaboration and communication with all the members. Any questions on that?
No, again, just make sure Lorene has that information so that we know when your meetings are. She usually reads them off, but it would always be helpful to get a reminder.
Thank you. We formally and respectfully request a meeting with a school committee member, the superintendent, and the special education director, ideally the first week in February, no later than the end of the month. Who should we contact to set this up?
You can contact me for that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. In closing, it is our expectation that we, the CLAC committee, and the North Kingstown School Department work together on all fundamental planning for students receiving special education services. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions? Mr. Mudge?
I recall being part of the CLAC committee several years ago, and it was a very robust committee, and with Sharon Schubert and yourself and others. And I remember we got a little stipend for you to help assist in your programs at the time. I'm not sure that's happening anymore, but it was in the budget to do that. But what I hear the message is something's not right. Okay, that's the message that's coming to me, and it's a message about coordination or cooperation, I think, and communications. That's the message that's again coming to me on this thing. I would like to ask one question though. The CLAC, in terms of working with the school department and everything else, I think they were required by state law to participate in the certification of the high school last year. Certification process was a part for special ed. Who was the representative that from CLAC that did that? Because I did have a couple of questions that I wanted to address.
No, I don't think that we had any input or representation on that.
Sure.
We're happy to participate with the committee in any kind of guidelines, regulations that need to be adhered to. I think that,
I mean, that's state law. Okay, thank you. I understand.
Before Mary Ann goes.
I think our attorney wanted to have something to say. Did you want to go first, Larry?
No, I just, Attorney Carroll is just going to clarify as far as the rewriting of the CLAC's bylaws and what the requirements would be and whatnot prior to it coming to us for a vote, so I'll let her.
I just asked the chair and the vice chair. What I heard you say is you're looking to change your bylaws. Is that correct? With the understanding, keep in mind that your bylaws have to be in accordance with the regulations as the purpose of CLAC. You obviously must know that, too. So,
governance, I think, yeah.
right, it's governed by the regulations as to the purpose of the CLAC committee. So any bylaw changes you make have to be in line with those regulations. And then what you would do is submit a proposed change to your bylaws that then the school committee would have to accept or reject. Madam Chair, if they need, obviously you're going to send them my way anyway, but if there's any questions that you have and you go through the superintendent, I can probably line up the template for you as it agrees to the regulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jones?
Maybe not so much a question, just, sorry, that's why I moved over there. I didn't mean to be rude. I couldn't with our great presentation set up here. I guess my only point would be is, I think it's very helpful, obviously, for committee members to get information and get brought up to speed on different aspects. Just a reminder that the town and its speaking last election made a point to reduce the size of this committee to 5, but nowhere where there's a reduction in the amount of work and liaisons and other committees that the committee is supposed to do. So, rotating members, I think, has to take into consideration that there's a facility subcommittee where there's a steep learning curve, a budget subcommittee, policy subcommittee, liaison with RIDE, et cetera, et cetera. So I applaud the point about educating us more, but I would just caution that, putting us on rotating needs to reflect that there'll be 2 less members in the future as well.
Can I comment?
Yes.
One of the reasons why we would like to have a leadership team is just for that very same reason for our own lives, because life is very busy, and so it really helps us to have, and that was another consideration that we were thinking in this, is that because everybody's so busy, if we had rotating members and we only have 4 meetings a year, that it would be easier to have somebody from the school committee. And it would be nice to have a variety of people understanding what it is we do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think right now the bylaws require a regular member to participate, so it alleviates the need for one particular member of the school committee to be present. It allows for schedules and vacationing and just life. So
I think that would be helpful.
hopefully, a rotating member would be a little bit more amenable for everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cerisi.
Madam Chair, if there are no objections, I'll ask that, as you previously mentioned, we move agenda item 5B1 forward for discussion at this time, and what I'd like to do is just put a motion on the table, and I'm sure there'll be discussion. So I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item 5B1 at this time.
I'll second that.
And I understand, Ms. Carroll, if I'm correct, but prior to our vote, the Director of Business gives the financial impact
Correct.
report?
That's according to statute. She has to give you the fiscal impact.
All right, Mrs. King, you have the floor.
The fiscal impact statement that will be available for everyone and that we will send to RIDE and to the state, there are several big areas that are going to be some changes for the school department. One area that's a rather small area would be how we have changed the stipends for clubs and advisors and based that more on a tier level that incorporates the intensity of the club. Coaches' stipends, we have also changed those around so that we can fit in more head coaches while still trying to garner some savings. One of the big changes that we have is the way sick time is currently distributed amongst employees in this union. Those changes will start July 1st, 2014. We're running a little bit late on actually ratifying the contract, so that's going to start in July 2014. We've also have some changes to the number of days that guidance counselors will be working. We have the big items. We have a very large change in the medical coverage for this group of employees, and the plan that we're going to be moving toward for this group is called a high deductible health care plan with a health savings account component. That, in effect, will be bringing down the rates that we currently pay approximately 21%. It's a very, very big change for all the employees. It's going to take a lot of education and a lot of implementation and a lot of working together, which we already have started. I've had several conversations. I see Kevin Dubois out there on how we're going to make sure everybody understands what their new plan is. I think once we get over the growing pains of it, people are going to really like it. But the big deal about it is that the premium that we are currently paying for a family plan is $21,200 per year, roughly. That's going to go down to about $18,000 per year, and a single plan from $8,300 to about $7,000. So those are really, really big savings that both the employee and the school district share in, because also their co-share for the employees is still the same co-share percentage, but the dollar value goes down. That medical coverage change for the 2 years left of the contract is estimated to save the school department $1.3 million. We also have a 20% co-payment on dental coverage for that group, and then we have salary increases. And the salary increase for FY14, the current year that we're in, is effectively 1% for the second half of the year, so it's a 0.5. The second year of the contract, it's at 2% for the second half of the year, so it's 1%, and then 1.5% in the third year, starting at the beginning of the year. And the cost of that is approximately $900,000. But all in with this contract, the school department will save approximately $500,000. The one thing that I do want to point out to the school committee is that in the year that we're in, I have an expense of approximately $158,000. I have pulled back spending on a couple of the departments to make sure that we can cover this, because if you're aware, that was not budgeted. There was no increase for this group of employees budgeted. So I just want to make that very clear, that we are pulling back spending on several departments so that we can ensure that there are no issues with making our budget for the year.
Thank you, Mrs. King. Why don't we, Mary Ann, did you have anything that you needed to say?
We had some major language changes that are going to be important going forward. Mrs. King mentioned the sick leave policy has been drastically changed. We've also been able to work out language in terms of department heads and their roles in the evaluation of teachers. We've made big changes to the evaluations and how the evaluations are done and how it's written in the contract. We handled the whole seniority issue, and we actually did that right in the beginning, which was commendable, considering that many of the districts are still fighting over that piece right now. All in all, I think we've got major language changes in this contract that's certainly going to be better for the students in North Kingstown. I want to commend the teachers for their cooperation and the fact that we moved slowly, but we were able to get a lot done, and I certainly, as the negotiator, are very happy with the contract that we were able to negotiate. So, and the members of the committee were there when we needed them. Dr. Auger and Dr. Humberg had a great role in language changes, and without slating the superintendent, I think the assistant superintendent really did the heavy hitting and the heavy lifting in those areas. Mrs. King.
Thanks, Mary Ann, appreciate that.
No offense, Phil, but she kind of asked me to do that. And,
I would agree with you on that, by the way.
And Mrs. King with her numbers, I mean, we would call her, I mean, on the last minute, and she would be developing numbers. So, and certainly our members of our school committee who were on the committee came through when we needed them. So, all in all, it was a great contract negotiation season with the teachers. And I want to thank everybody for making my job so much easier. And I think it's a contract that we can all be very happy with.
Dr. Auger.
Yes, I would agree with you, Mary Ann, that, I feel like we really had an excellent team to help us to make a good contract. And that team includes Mrs. King and Dr. Humbert, Mrs. Page, Mr. Cerisi, Mr. Briscarden, but it also includes, the teachers, and led by Mr. Dubois. And at no time, it's not like we went into this agreeing on every item, that's for sure, because it took a long time to go back and forth. And it was truly a negotiation, but it was a constructive one, and it was a very respectful one all the way through. And it lasted the better part of a year. So these things can get very frustrating. But everyone kind of held it together, and we came out with a very good product. And I am very appreciative of NEA-NK and their leadership for helping us to find a really good contract here. Thank you.
We'll just go down the row, committee members. So, well, this is, I think, the third teacher contract that I've worked on, and it seems like things have gotten longer in terms of the contracting. So maybe it's good that I will be off this committee in December, because you don't want to continue to get longer as I stay on more.
Might be a write-in. You never know.
You don't know. No. But I feel like we got a lot achieved. We went in to this contract negotiation with many, many different things that we were trying to negotiate. And it was difficult to find consensus, but I'm glad of where we came. It was a very respectful process, and that I really appreciated with the teachers. I felt like even though it was difficult, I could still sit down and still talk with the teachers who worked with my kids, because there were teachers there who worked with my kids. And so for that, I was very appreciative. We did get a good savings over the $500,000 over the 3 years. It is the sort of thing that both sides had to give up on things that maybe we were very passionate about. So I appreciate the process. I appreciate the time that the teachers put in, and I appreciate that we've come to this point where we can say we do have a contract, or almost, at a few minutes. Mr. Cerisi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief. Just, thanking the school administration, my fellow school committee member colleagues, and the members of the NEA-NK negotiating subcommittee, and as well as the entire membership. My understanding, they had a vote on this past Friday to ratify this tentative agreement. And hopefully tonight, in a few minutes, the committee will be voting as well to ratify this tentative agreement. I just want to reiterate something that's already been said by the superintendent and by the Mrs. Page. I think the thing that I'm most proud of is that although this process was long, and it is always a long process, there's a lot at stake here for both sides. It remained productive and respectful throughout, and obviously there's plenty of frustration that goes along with 1 o'clock in the morning, finishing up meetings. So I think the fact that we were able to remain productive and respectful throughout the process is important. And I just think, lastly, we obviously living during very difficult economic times and financial times. We live in a very litigious society. The fact that through a lot of hard work and a lot of patience, both sides were able to come to an agreement without any additional or future litigation outside the bargaining process speaks volumes to the past, present, and hopefully future relationship that the administration and committee has enjoyed with our local NEA-NK. So thank you very much, and your work is always respected and appreciated.
Okay, well, I just want to thank both sides for all the time and the effort and the hours spent. I was not on the negotiating subcommittee, but I know that they spent many, many hours, and lots of pizza consumed, late nights, and it's appreciated by everyone at this table, and I think by the public, to see that we've come to an agreement without any problem through, a pretty smooth process. And I want to give credit to the teachers for being open to this new healthcare idea, because changes like that are nerve-wracking, and they were open to it and participatory, and I know Mary has every intention, and we do too, of continuing to work with them so that everybody's at a comfort level in understanding how it works. It's a little complicated, as I'm sure you all know. So it's a good relationship, one of mutual respect. I thank everybody that spent all the time negotiating this.
Again, a nice thank you to our administrators, fellow school committee members, and the teacher representatives. I was not on the negotiations committee, but I know in our meetings getting updates that a lot of time and effort went into this negotiating process on everyone's part. And I think the end result is, a contract that's favorable to all, and I'm glad that it was able to be worked out in the way it was. Thank you.
Yeah, I won't belabor repeating the same stuff, so thank you to all involved. Yeah, I guess one small dimension, when parents, especially parents, find out that the teacher's contract ran out in the summer, and yet from a professionalism, from a operational standpoint, instruction and the educational process went on without a beat. So thank you to the teachers for the professionalism and showing that as the process needed to wind its way through, that the concern and the education of the students went on, and there was no interruptions or other major disruptions to that. So thank you very much for setting and showing that example.
Well, at the end of the table, there's not too much left to say, but certainly the subcommittee put a lot of time and effort into this thing, so they're to be commended, as well as the teachers. We're going through a pretty tough 4 years here, 5 years financially, though. A lot of us, and our whole nation, the state, nation, and probably the world for that matter. So, we have a lot of issues that our community and country are facing, but your understanding of those issues is, deeply appreciated. I will say that this is something that was worked on, okay, and what we have to do is go further now, working with how to reduce our costs so that, we can fund a quality education program in terms of consolidating, grounds, transportation, some other type of things. So there's still a lot of work to be done, and it certainly shouldn't, the savings shouldn't fall strictly on the shoulders of the teachers. So hopefully we can get on and do that and free up money for our educational system. So good job. Thank you.
All right, if there are no further comments, it is now time. There's a motion and a second on the table. Lorraine, why don't we take a roll call vote?
Linda Avanzado.
Yes.
Larry Cerisi.
Yes?
Cheryl Clarkin.
Yes.
Robert Jones.
Yes.
William Mudge.
Yes?
Kimberly Page.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you.
Richard's up next.
All right. So now moving on with the rest of the meeting. Thank you very much of those of you who've come here tonight. Thank you for your participation. And so we are moving on with the agenda. We'll come back now to presentations, and we have the Wireless Classroom Initiative. Mr. Booth.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Tonight we're going to talk about the Wireless Classroom Initiative that was put forward from the State of Rhode Island General Assembly. First question we got to ask is, why do we need wireless? Less than 25% of classrooms in Rhode Island have 100% internet coverage. North Kingston's about 5% coverage. Most classrooms in Rhode Island have limited classroom wiring. North Kingstown is not adequately wired in the classrooms. It's a lot less expensive to put wireless in the classrooms than it is to put wired connections in the classrooms. Excuse me. Rhode Island students' access to labs and laptops is about 7% statewide. North Kingston does not have the capacity to even come close to that at this point. So who needs wireless? North Kingstown does. We've come so far in this process. General Assembly has provided funding appropriation in 2013 through February 2013 through June 2013. They set aside $20 million to fund this initiative statewide. What we did was we met with a lot of vendors, and we narrowed it down to 5 key vendors that had products that we were interested in that would be the best for the North Kingstown community. RIDE vendor approval process happened in October of 2013. We met with RIDE. We went over all of the proposals that we as a district received, and we validated that all the quotes that we received were in accordance with the rules that RIDE set up for their program. And then we did a bid evaluation in November, December to make sure that all of the key parts that North Kingstown needed was indeed covered, that what we had asked for in the bids was in what the bids that we had, so that we picked the right one. We made our vendor selection that we felt was the best for the town of North Kingstown and the students. And the appropriation of funds was decided by RIDE to be $688,819.02. And so the next step in this process is for me to stand before you folks and ask for your permission to spend that money that RIDE has appropriated for us to make our district a wireless district. We chose a vendor called Meraki. Why did we choose Meraki? Well, first of all, they're one of the approved vendors that RIDE has pre-qualified as an appropriate vendor for what we're trying to do here. It's a strong adoption by our peer districts. For instance, Portsmouth, Cranston, Warwick, Lincoln, and Barrington have all adopted Meraki technology. Meraki is Cisco. When we first started this process, Meraki was their own company, but during the process, Cisco purchased Meraki's technology, and now Meraki is now a part of the Cisco family. Gartner, you all know who Gartner is, recognized Cisco Meraki as a key player in this marketplace. And it's the most intuitive to install, to operate, so we don't really need any additional staff to maintain it, and we don't need a whole lot of training to run it. Of all of the ones that we had tested and implemented, this is the one that we found was the easiest to work with and required the least amount of a learning curve. But yet, the nice thing about this one is it's got superior signal strengths, and it's got a lot of features that are going to help us to manage our network, to manage the bandwidth that's available, and to control how our network is operating. So, what do we get for our $688,000? Well, the first thing we do is we get one wireless N access point in each classroom across the district. We get new wiring for each access point to the Category 6E standards. We get new fiber between the high school and the data center, which is going to improve speed to the high school incredibly. We get a very easy management console that is cloud-based. We get installation, we get training, and we get support. We get new switches to support the wireless access points. So what's left? What do we got left to do? Well, right now we're working on the grant application, and we hope to have that done sometime in the next couple of weeks. We have to coordinate with the vendor to make sure that the work that's being performed is being done according to our standards, and make sure that we have things covered like BCI checks, make sure that the statement of work that we have matches what they're doing, and to make sure that it's done in a way that we can count on it being there for many years to come. We're hoping to commence deployment late spring if everything goes according to plans, and quite possibly have it up and running before the end of school year. Once it's approved, we're ready for student learning. And with that, that's my short and sweet. Does anybody have any questions?
Are there questions for Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Mr. Ahmad, go ahead.
Was somebody first? As I understand it, this, from a financial standpoint, town's got to pre-fund this, so we'll need to go to the council to get $680,000, and then we get reimbursed.
I'm going to defer that to Mrs. King.
Yeah, actually, I am in talks with RIDE because RIDE has not finalized how they're going to reimburse the school department, but we do know it's going to be based on milestones, so no. There's not a $700,000 upfront investment that we need from the town. First of all, it will be based on milestones. The vendor has also communicated that they would be willing to work with us, and I'm going to speak to them about that and exactly what that means. And I have also had conversations with Michael Embry about the fact that there will be some timing difference on this, but it's not the entire $700,000 up front. We have to meet milestones with RIDE that the vendor clearly has to meet as well before they will reimburse us, and clearly we're not paying anybody until we know RIDE says, what was done is correct.
Well, good. I'd like to, understand that. So certainly, we're going to have, especially if it's this year, okay, what the financial impact may be. If we have to go to the council, we should know that as soon as possible. I'm sure the vendor's not going to come in without any, without putting something up front. We have, I was told, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we have about 2,000 computers in this school district.
A little bit more, yes.
A little bit more? Yeah. What would a little bit more be? 2,500?
About 2,100.
2,100?
Yeah.
And of those 2,100, how many have internet access today?
They all do.
They all do. So what's going to happen with this system that we can't already do?
Well, first is bring your own devices.
Excuse me?
Bring your own devices. So students and staff can bring their own laptop, their own iPad, their own device, and connect onto our network and use that for, a variety of applications. It's going to allow us to get laptop carts that can be used in any classroom for testing, especially for the park testing that's coming up. iPads. Which we don't have enough, at this point, we don't have enough mobile applications. We have, 2 or 3 computers in some classrooms. In some classrooms, we have labs. So, the students that are in a classroom that has 2 or 3 desktops in it certainly can't do their testing unless they're using a lab or something. So there's just not enough capacity for the labs to address all of the needs that we have right now. So we should be able to, have mobile carts. We should be able to have.
Mr. Mudge, if I can interject on this one?
Yeah.
I think I've made you all aware, and I just want to make a reminder that, we are in the process of doing a study of, where our technology capacity and what our needs would be. And that study is due to us very soon, the results of it. And we're going to use that to create a long-term technology strategic plan. So, how we use technology will become much more enhanced by having wireless. We would have a lot more options at hand. Right now, we do have computers in classrooms, but they're all plugging in. And that's not always the most efficient way to work, obviously. And it doesn't necessarily reflect the world that we are living in right now, where all of our students are using wireless technology on a regular basis, whether we like it or not. The key from the commissioner and the legislature on down is to make more options for schools to use wireless technology as a learning tool, whether that's working with a laptop or an iPad or any other device. It gives us a lot more possibilities. So specifically, what are we going to do with it? That has not been determined yet, but we have a lot more options.
Well, I'm kind of concerned that, I think we certainly need to move forward and be in a position to implement programs that we want. The one thing that bothers me about the plan itself is, and this has nothing to do with our community, is that it doesn't do much to help the kid that's at home, to say the least, okay? Although it contributes, and it doesn't help the kids that probably need it the most. And I recall, and Mr. Jones might be able to help me here, I'm not sure, that there was a community in Massachusetts, or somebody, that fellow gave a presentation up at Bryant, and they were talking about Wi-Fiing the town. Do you recall that, the fellow that came in from Mass? But anyway, my question is not to put Mr. Jones on the spot, has been any thought of Wi-Fiing the town?
Not by me.
Yeah, I mean, that's a ranging question, and I'm not sure any. In fact, I think we ought to Wi-Fi the state, okay, quite frankly, so that we not only have a capability within our schools, everybody can turn on an iPhone or a smartphone, or as I call it, a dumb phone, any place. It seems to me we ought to have a capability with a laptop or a computer.
Well, it's going to be $688,000 to do just the school district.
Yeah, well, I understand, but what I'm talking about is what I was leading to is if we could somehow, and I don't know what the cost would be to do the town, that means the kids could get on for free, okay? The kids that don't have the monies and the dollars and things like that, and be part of the system all the time. Okay, so that's why I asked, and I'm certainly.
There is the public library, which has open Wi-Fi, and there's our library here.
But, some of the things that I think about, and like Dr. Leger said, that we kind of haven't really decided what we're going to do with this yet, but I just hope it's going to match up to the needs that we see in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other questions for Mr. Booth about the proposal that we have in front of us today? Mr. Jones.
Thank you. So based on the schedule, I think you had a tentative thing up there, but this would be completed by the end of this academic year?
That's the goal. Once it's approved, we have to sit down with the vendor, and obviously, we're not the only ones that's doing this. So it depends on the vendor's work schedule at that point. That's why I want to get the ball rolling on this so that we're the first ones to get looked at by the vendor. So we're not waiting for other districts to finish up their projects so that the workers that are doing it at the other districts can come here and work on ours. I'd like them to be waiting for our project to finish.
And so what's the criteria for what we're calling classrooms? I mean, is it generally, I mean, the only thing I ask is on some of the tours we go to, you know, there's some rooms that I know the school uses for certain, like I was thinking like in Davisville Middle, there was that room
The CLR room?
Yeah. So, I mean, are those rooms going to be?
Any room that there's scheduled education taking place in. So there are some rooms like gyms, office space that's not covered under this project, that at some point we're going to go through and we're going to put access points in there that it certainly will be scalable so that we can do that. It's just that the state is not going to pay for that. But it's a very small extension to go and do that compared to the grand scheme of things.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yes, Mrs. King.
One thing I would just like to say is that Mr. Booth and his assistant have done a real lot of work on this. This was not merely just talking to RIDE and RIDE saying, here's $688,000. He has spent a lot of time on this with the vendors, with RIDE, making choices, reviewing our options. So I just thought it was important that everybody understand that this was an incredible effort for Rich and one other person in our, Chris Scheib, in our IT department. So it was a lot of work for those two.
Thank you. Mr. Cerisi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to thank Rich for his presentation and for all the work that he and his staff put forward on this. And if I believe I'm correct, this presentation actually falls under agenda item D1. So at this time, I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item D1, which is the approval of the wireless vendor state Wi-Fi grant.
Second. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Jones.
I would just, and I think we talked about this, Mary, just make sure the record reflects that the vendors.
Yes, the agenda item has it spelt wrong. It is Meraki, M-E-R-A-K-I.
Yeah, and I actually, I apologize. I should have included the name of the vendor in my motion. So if you could, Mrs. Berglund, if you could just correct that for the record, please. Thank you. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Yeah, thank you.
Could I ask one more question?
Yes, Mr. Mudge, you may ask another question.
Was this a competitive bid? How did this happen?
We interviewed, I want to say 8 or 9 different vendors. Of those 8 or 9 vendors that we interviewed, we narrowed the selection down to 5. We walked through every building with each vendor. It took about 1 day per vendor to go through and explain our network and how we were laid out and what we were expecting and what we were, what our plan was for the wireless. Those 5 vendors then went back and put together proposals for us. The proposals were then sent in blind to RIDE, so we never got a copy of them. We sat with RIDE and opened them at a public bid opening with RIDE. And that was the first time that we actually saw what the bids were. And it was a competitive bid situation. It does not mean that we took the lowest priced vendor. We actually did not take the lowest priced vendor. We took the vendor that had the most bang for the buck for the town of North Kingstown.
So as part of this, as I understand it then, you didn't really design the system so much as it's kind of like submarines when they design submarines. What you've done is you put a requirements out that you need such and such speed, bandwidth, so forth and so on.
Correct.
And then you tell these folks where you want that capability.
Correct.
I mean, you didn't give them a schematic or anything like that.
We gave them floor plans of every building.
Right, but you gave them a requirements document. So they all basically.
Well, essentially, we sat down with them. We said, here's the areas that we want to cover. Here's how many students we have. We planned on 3 devices per student so that in the future, we're not going to run into capacity issues. So that was one of the unique requirements that we had, was that we wanted to make sure that we could cover 3 devices per classroom per student. So we made sure that would work. We said we wanted to, these are the areas we wanted to cover. These are the areas that we needed to replace things, like switches that needed to be replaced. The fiber that's going from here back to the data center is a huge undertaking. And that's being done as part of the bid. All of the new access points and everything that they're going to put in is all going to be Category 6 wiring, which will take us into the future. So there's all of these things that we put in there that were little, this is what we want type of thing. And some of that was mandated by RIDE.
Okay.
So we essentially said we want a submarine, and this is how fast we want it to go. And
Well, yeah, that's exactly how they do it to the vendor. How deep do you want it to go, and how's the speed?
Right.
And you go figure out, how do you make it happen, So at some point in time, you'll have a schematic or something. Now you have a schematic.
we'll get an as-built diagram, yes.
Of where you're doing that and when I'd like to see that when it's provided. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, if there are no further questions, are we ready to vote? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to approve item number D1, say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Cerisi.
Thank you, Mr. Booth. Madam Chair, if there are no objections, I would just suggest that we move agenda item, sorry, it looks like H2. It's approval of stipend for winter coaches. I think we may have some students and some coaches here this evening for that agenda item, and I know we have exams taking place this week at the high school, so we'll help get them home quickly so they can finish studying for their exam tomorrow. I know they're all excited to do that, so we'll help them out. If there's no objection, if we could just move over to that agenda item at this time.
Yes, I have no, unless there's any, is there any problem with that? Okay. All right, so we're moving to, and I know, Lorene, that this is out of order for you, so apologize.
Okay, I can go with it.
H2.
For you, Lorraine.
Do I have a motion for approval of the stipend for the winter coaches? So moved.
Second, I know the superintendent might want to speak to that, but
Sure.
just like to get the
I
move.
think a lot of people in this room tonight are aware that, we have had a salary schedule, if you will, for coaches in North Kingstown, that for some time it has been a goal of mine, and I know a number of members of the school committee, to do a little bit better organization about, to make sure that there's kind of a rhyme and reason toward the pay of coaches. Through the negotiating process with our teachers, we were looking to kind of reorganize a little bit about how we go about salaries for coaches. So we put together kind of a tier system. There are 4 tiers in all, and a couple of odd roles that aren't necessarily coaches per se with a season, for instance, the weightlifting piece. And we were able to reorganize that, shift around some funding in order to get to a point where there is a rhyme and reason to how coaches get paid that we can see dependably throughout, year by year, but also to come to some savings, set things in a more appropriate place, and find funds to be more equitable about at least funding head coaches for all sports across the board. So, so tonight, the one piece that we have not done last year or yet this year, but I'm hoping will be approved tonight, is to approve head coaches for high school gymnastics and for high school boys hockey, and also for, I can't remember the middle school sports, but we have a couple of middle school sports that have not been funded. And that's part of the problem that we've had. Some have gotten funding, some have not over the years. Some teams have been introduced with the proviso that, well, we can have the team, but we can't fund the coach. This makes it a little bit more equitable in that at least the head coach will be funded by the school department. The issue in the contract basically says that if the school department determines that it's going to fund a particular coach, there is a set price for that coach. And that we now have a new contract, so now we can now go forward with this particular item tonight. So I'm recommending approval of this item for tonight. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Cerisi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to thank the superintendent and the other administrators and our athletic director, Howie, as well as the coaches, and I know Mr. Jones has spent some time on this as well, for finally getting this in a format that does have a rhyme or reason, because quite frankly, I've been up here for 7 years, and I don't think I ever caught on to the rhyme or reason and how we came up with the format of the different pay scales. So definitely more understandable and user-friendly, and I think it is accomplishes something that we've been trying to accomplish with this for way too long a time, which is to make sure we have equity amongst the different sports and coaches and teams in the district and whatnot, and we are fairly and adequately dispersing our funding to those different programs and teams. So thank you to the coaches, and I know there's several parents in particular that we've heard from over the past several months that have advocated for this, and I appreciate their feedback and input, and I appreciate them hanging in there with us and continuing to advocate, and hopefully we get this to the right spot. So thank you.
Mrs. Clarkin.
I just have one question. Dr. Auger mentioned that it also affected some of the middle school winter coaches, but I see on our agenda reporting form it only lists the ice hockey and gymnastics at the high school.
The middle school ones will come up next agenda.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yes, I misspoke on that, sorry.
Mrs. Avanzato and then Mr. Mudge.
I'm not going to talk long because I would repeat a lot of what Mr. Cerisi said. I just want to say thank you to administration and also to the parents that have contributed. This has only been something that we've been talking about for, 10 years or so, but actually there probably always was some sort of, but it wasn't articulable to others as to what the criteria was. This way we have something on paper, more organized and I think equitable. So that's really a step in the right direction. Thank you.
Mr. Mudge.
Excuse me. Do I understand this correctly in terms of what we talked about earlier, that the AD, Mr. Haig, has helped reorganize this in a fashion that will allow us to add the gymnastics and the hockey coach without a increase in the budget?
Without an increase above what we had originally budgeted for athletics coaches, yes.
Yeah, right, good. So I congratulate him on doing that, and I got my support.
All right. Are there any other further comments? Okay, we have a motion and a second on the table. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay, motion passes. All right, that brings us back to getting back on the agenda. We are on presentations and recognitions. We have a few things that we've had some submissions to us. More specifically, I asked some of the principals if they had anybody who they'd like to recognize. I know Louise Danette said that she wanted to make sure it was mentioned that Lynn Downey at Quinnesset has been awarded the Golden Apple by Commissioner Giss and Patrice Wood. Lynn Downey is a teacher of 25 years in PE, so congratulations to her. And Wendy Amelot also emailed me and said that they had a bit of an emergency or a minor issue in the last week, and she wanted to thank the quick response of her staff, student transportation department, maintenance department, and central office that allowed their emergency to be handled swiftly and calmly. She said when all was done, the students enjoyed eating lunch in their rooms with their teachers. So I also received correspondence from Lynn Soronin about the students who were received the Certified Certificate Planning from the Rhode Island General Treasurer's Office. There are 41 students. So I will quickly read their names, and I know there's some other people who I gave other things to read to. Nicholas Baraji, Nathan Campbell, Brian Cox, Ian, who I'm going to murder his name, Del Monica, Joe Ducey, Zachary Emmerich, Connor Horsley, Joshua Jordan, Cameron Lamar, Tanner Lindsay, Jennifer Littman, Matthew McKay, Riley Miller, Catherine Norris, Tara Petrie, Bailey Pratt, Joshua Preli, Kyle Sayer, Benjamin Shola, Zachary Sullivan, Charles Tiergenza, Jackson Wolf, Michael Allen, Alec Bedford, Matthew Bolter, Corey Coogan, Joshua Degrio, Sarah Day, Matthew Dagan, Milo DeGasper, these are like in 5-point pitch. Travis Early, Colin Eaton, Connor Ferguson, Ashley Gray, Christopher Gurney, Trevor Huntington, Hope Johnson, Timothy Lynch, Corey Maroney, Nathan McCullough, Matthew Murphy, and Gia Yarn. So all those received the Certified Financial Literacy Learning. So I know we have other things.
Yes, I have an email from Janice Strain, the visual arts educator, and her entire department. And I want to congratulate the winners of this year's North Kingstown High School Scholastic Art Award. Amala Bender, Hannah Blackwood, Hope Johnson, Kayla Kennedy, Molly Lewander, Tatiana Noriega, Devin Phillips, and Carrie Sullivan. So congratulations to all those students.
Why don't you read the Southern New England one?
It's a shorter list. So this is one of the nice perks to this position. So I have the privilege to announce the 2014 Southern New England Honors Band. Nathan Ackerman, Caleb Anderson, Delaney Bamford, Megan Bamford, Tommy Cross, Vicki Gardner, Drew Gilbalt, Nick Haskell, Anna Jagger, Bethany Lindeblad, Mark Rogers, Ben Sawyer, Kate Spitalnik, and Emma Vogel. Congratulations.
Yeah, we had more students who made the Rhode Island.
Yes.
But I won't make Cheryl read all 51 names.
We'd be here for quite a long time. Can we post this on the high school website?
I know that Mrs. Silvera sent it out to a number of places, but we can look into that. Dr. Auger, you had.
Yes, I have one very special announcement. Lynn Saronin happens to be in the audience tonight. You can wave to us, Lynn. How are you? Lynn, in this packet tonight, is announcing her retirement from the North Kingstown School Department. I believe, Lynn, it's 28 years? 28 years, where she has been a tremendous teacher, department head, and assistant principal for North Kingstown High School, and we cannot thank you enough. Thank you, Lynn.
All right. Yes, Mr. Cerisi, you had something.
Yep, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to take one quick second to recognize one of our teachers at the high school, and perhaps Dr. Humber or Dr. Auger could speak in greater detail regarding this teacher than I possibly could. But I just really quick just received an email from one of the teachers at the high school. Actually received it as a parent of one of his students at the high school. My son is in his class. His name is Richard Garland, and this was an email to all the parents of the students in his classroom. So I just wanted to take a real quick minute to recognize him. I shared this email with my colleagues on the school committee, as well as the administration, and I have to say, it's really nice when you get something like this where you have something nice to share with everyone, because that doesn't happen too often for us. But just in a nutshell, just the interest, I've never met him, and nor do I know him, but just the depth of interest that he takes in his students and in his profession, and the level of communication and commitment that he has is just amazing and inspiring. This is one of the nicest, best email correspondence that I think I have ever had as a parent or as a school committee member. So, and as far as who he is, where he came from, and what he does, I think Dr. Humberg or Dr. Roger can speak to that better than I could. So, but I really do think we should take a second to recognize people like this, because it's not very often we do get to recognize things like this.
So the teacher to which Mr. Cerisi is referring is Rich Garland. And, you know, Rich is a breath of fresh air. He has a business background and joined us as a second career. I think it's a second career. Works at here at the high school. But the thing about Rich is every time you just like send one of those emails out and, that say it would be a great opportunity for our students, next thing I know, Rich is doing something about it and acting and providing an opportunity for our kids. You just heard the list of students who completed the EverFi financial literacy program. There was a computer week called Code of Honor, and I happened to send that out to the North Kingstown staff, and next thing you know, I get a reply that Rich's students have already been doing it. Sent out something when we went to a tech conference. We needed students to demonstrate student work at a statewide technology conference, and Rich was there providing students, and they actually presented to thousands of educators across the state. So those are just a few of the examples. Even we mentioned something about he's a webmaster for the high school, and you mentioned something about putting kind of a backpack express. You know, Rich has already done it on his website. So not only is he ahead of the curve, but just a tremendous openness and willingness to do something beyond, and it is amazing. So thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Kenworthy, you don't mind if I come in tomorrow morning? I'll do the morning announcements, and we'll... Thank you very much. But I will, obviously, I'm going to correspond directly with him, but if you could pass our discussion along to him as well, that would be terrific. Thank you very much.
All right, that brings us to citizens' comments. I believe Mr. Cerisi has a list.
Yeah, we have Shelley McDonald. I think some of these people already left. But we'll check. He walked out and then came back. So.
Good evening. My name is Shelley McDonald, and I'm a teacher here at North Kingstown High School. I have to say, it looks like I have my work cut out for me because I'm here to speak about the wireless initiative. I would actually like to urge the school committee to hold off on installing this technology until such a time as it can be found safe. And I would like to demand that until such time, and for as long as wireless transmitters are operating in our school buildings, that parents, staff, and students be made aware of the documented health risks associated with the radiation emitted by wireless devices. Those devices do include Wi-Fi, cell phones, iPads or other tablets, and the smart clicker systems. Just a little bit. On May 31st, 2011, the International Agency for Research on Cancer released a statement that classifies all RF emitting devices, including Wi-Fi, as a Class 2B carcinogen based on the increased risk of glioma, which is a malignant brain cancer. I understand that we just went through the presentation by Rich Booth, where we talked about $688,000 to outfit the schools with Wi-Fi and iPads. I would like the school committee to consider the expert testimony and numerous studies that have been conducted and maybe reverse that decision. The American Academy of Environmental Medicine stated about Wi-Fi in schools, adverse health effects from wireless radio frequency fields such as learning disabilities, altered immune responses, and headaches clearly exist and are well documented in the scientific literature. Safer technology such as hard wiring is strongly recommended in schools. The American Academy of Pediatrics, which is made up of more than 60,000 pediatricians, petitioned Congress in December 2012 to update the safety levels of Wi-Fi exposure, particularly for children and pregnant women. And the U.S. government's National Institutes of Health published a study showing children's health is profoundly at risk from exposure to wireless devices. Martha Herbert, an MD from Harvard Medical, recently stated in a paper that electromagnetic radiation from things like Wi-Fi exerted disorganizing effect on the ability to learn and remember. This will make it harder for some children to learn, particularly those who are already having problems in the first place. That is a direct quote. It should be noted that the short-term symptoms of Wi-Fi radiation poisoning include fatigue, headaches, migraines, dizziness, nausea, visual auditory distortion, tachycardia, anxiety, depression, memory loss, ADHD, night sweats, and insomnia. These are things that are not conducive to a learning environment. Today, many school districts are ignoring these warnings and putting the Wi-Fi in anyway, and they're, stating that the FCC guidelines say it's okay, and I understand that, but I just want to say a little bit about the FCC guidelines. They were first put into effect in 1996. They're based on a 200-pound healthy male, and they're based on 6 minutes of exposure at 1 milliwatt per square centimeter. Now, Wi-Fi exposure is cumulative. So what that means is exposures can be below 1 milliwatt per square centimeter, which is what many of the wireless companies insist that their technology is. However, students are going to be exposed to it for approximately 6.5 hours a day, about 33 hours a week. And I've measured the radiation from phones accessing the internet wirelessly, and so I can tell you firsthand that exposure levels will be exceeded daily. Not only that, but the radiation compounds. So the radiation from my tablet compounds with the radiation from my neighbor's tablet, compounds with the signal from the Wi-Fi router, and again, the exposure level is exceeded. I just heard today that we're going to be using a wireless N receiver, which is one of the more powerful receivers. The wireless B, which is what you probably have in your homes, has a 250-foot radius. This one has 1,000. And I guess we're planning on putting an access point in every classroom. That concerns me. So what I want to say with all of this is the FCC guidelines are not what a school district should be looking at. As I've stated, in 1996, 1 milliwatt per square centimeter. 1/1000th of that, you're going to see headaches, dizziness, irritability, difficulty breathing, chest pain. At 1/10,000th of that, you're going to be seeing cardiac issues like tachycardia, racing heart, heart attacks. And at 1/1,000,000th, you're going to be seeing in school-aged children from short-term exposure, headaches, irritation, and concentration difficulties. So the FCC guidelines are thousands of times too high and don't take into account the growing body of science. It also doesn't apply to children who are sensitive at exposure levels 1 million times below current guidelines. So I ask, why would we consider putting a technology like this into our schools, knowing what we know about how it affects our students? We should learn from the school systems who are taking the Wi-Fi out. France, Italy, New Zealand, Canada, to name a few, had it in, they took it out after noting the effects on their school population. Cancers, headaches, heart attacks. Heart attacks are increasing in patients under 19 years old. I think that's worrisome. Today, the body of evidence that suggests that we should not put Wi-Fi in our schools is overwhelming. The health risk to students and staff by itself should be enough reason to hold off on installation. But now to add to that the learning challenges associated with the technology, the difficulty concentrating, ADHD, memory issues, should not be part of the school day. And I'd also like to say is we don't need the wireless to access the internet, to access the information, to get our children what they need to be critical thinkers and successful when they move beyond us. As was mentioned, we have 2,100 computers fully wired for the internet. We can teach responsible research that way. Okay?
Thank you, Mrs. McDonald.
Oh, hold on, I'm not done.
Could I just, I apologize, but I need to interrupt you for one moment.
Yep.
Our policy allows 3 minutes per speaker for public comment, and we're actually going way over that, but I would definitely allow you another 30 seconds if you could just wrap it up in that 30 seconds. Thank you very much.
Okay, so parents are asked to send their children to school 180 days a year, so it is so I'm asking, is it responsible to knowingly put those kids at risk, knowing what we know about the effects of wireless radiation? I'm wondering if there was informed consent. Today, I and 24 of my colleagues petitioned the school committee to look into the documented risks associated with Wi-Fi in our schools. I have the petition right here. And I'd like to ask that all affected personnel and families be notified by the school district that there is a documented carcinogen in their workplace and or child's learning environment, because I believe that we have a legal right to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McDonald.
Thank you. That's very interesting.
You can give that to our clerk, Clarine Berglund. That would be great. And she'll make sure that we all get a copy of it.
Thank you. Grace D'Antonio, I believe. I apologize if I did not pronounce it correctly.
Good evening. My name is Grace Antuano. I live on 15 Field Court. After receiving so much positive feedback at Democracy Night, I felt compelled to come back to make some comments about Common Core state standards. However, I would like to begin by calling two facts to your attention. First, that it is estimated that over 7 billion people on Earth. Second is the well-known fact that every single person has different fingerprints, even identical twins. Therefore, fingerprints are much like people, aren't they? Because every single person is different. We are so fortunate that there are over 7 billion different people on this planet because it provides us with the ability to make amazing things happen through the exchange of these unique ideas. It is these ideas that help to make us the individuals we are. I believe that this individuality will be stripped from future students because of the implementation of Common Core state standards. However, this is only one of the major problems I see with Common Core based on my research. While researching, more and more, a question I find myself asking is why? Why do we need it, and why have these standards been accepted? To answer this question, many would first note the obvious fact that the standards are nationally implemented. Therefore, they must be satisfactory. However, the foundation of our school cannot be built on the opinions of other states. I've been in contact with Dr. Hanley, the Commissioner of Education of Alaska, one of the 5 states that has not agreed to the full implementation of Common Core, and he said that he, quote, didn't think it appropriate for someone outside of Alaska to say what could be changed and what couldn't. We fully retain the right to choose and modify our standards as we see fit, end quote. He's absolutely correct, because we do have the rights, don't we? We have simply chosen not to act on them, and that may be part of the problem. For example, before the introduction of PARCC and Common Core, 47 other states had their own statewide standardized tests. Only 3 states used the same. Rhode Island was one of the 3 that used the New England Common Assessment Program, also known as NECAP. So this is not the first time that Rhode Island has used a test that other states have implemented. NECAP was once accepted with great enthusiasm, but it is currently being replaced with a test to evaluate whether or not the so-called rigorous standards are working. Therefore, because the standards are accepted by more states than the previous time, we are supposed to believe they are adequate. I am not brilliant by any means, but I cannot comprehend how this is the proper justification for the implementation. Another point many would then try to debate is that these standards better prepare children for college and the workforce. However, I was recently fortunate enough to sit down with Dr. Humbird, who at our meeting said no one knows whether or not the standards actually do prepare children for the real world. She's correct. In a policy briefing of the National Education Association, it is written, quote, there is no research or evidence indicating that national standards are essential for a nation's students to be high achievers, end quote. Education is not something that can be repeated or mass-produced. We cannot simply wait and allow the teachers and staff to slowly watch the students as if they are guinea pigs in a 4-year experiment. When other students and I graduate, we have no choice but to face a new chapter of our lives, and if we are not adequately prepared for it because the nationally accepted standards failed, there is virtually nothing we can do about it. I'd like to present you with this binder. In it are the fingerprints of students and their names and plans for after high school that they are hopefully prepared for. It is filled with the fingerprints of 200 individuals at my school, 200 unique fingerprints that represent the 200 different students against Common Core. Again, I'd like to ask that you reevaluate your support for Common Core. Do you feel that this properly represents the opinions of the students and staff of North Kingstown schools and the citizens of North Kingstown? Also, please reassess the standards. If they are not the best, then why are you allowing them to be enforced? Determine also what your goal is while serving on the committee. Are you trying to meet state benchmarks or provide the best education possible for students? Previously, most of you mentioned what you are proud of that your committee has achieved. Finally, I ask if the implementation of Common Core is something you would be proud of. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Grace. Next is Mr. Greg Mancini.
Greg Mancini, 61 Main Street. You had approved the issue I'd come up for. I didn't want to leave. I thought it was a little rude without. So I figured I'd stay and just thank you.
Thank you.
I also want to congratulate you on your contract, saving $500,000. You can field quite a hockey team. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But anyways, thank you. And Jody Murphy and Liam Ryle were up there to testify.
Okay.
So
They
thank
left
you
as
again.
well. They left. Okay.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I see that the hockey team's off to a great start at 5-1, I believe,
Yeah.
so good luck. I believe that's all we have for public comment. Mr. McKay?
Mr. McKay.
Is he public?
Harry McKay, 747 Shermantown Road. Thank you all. A couple of things. One, I'd like to congratulate Larry Veria on a very successful night at Dialogues and Democracy. Everybody turned out. It was a fantastic night. And I think it's a big shot in the arm for the town. Two, the question I would have about the wireless proposal, is it a one-time expenditure? And what are the costs in the following years to implement this strategy? And that wasn't clearly stated here tonight. If we're going to incur future costs for this wireless contract. So
There are some marginal routine maintenance costs with it, and we do believe we're going to need a server or two, but there's still one-time expenditures. They're still very small.
what about the contract moving forward, the wireless contracts?
It's a 10-year contract.
So, in other words, all we'll have is upgrades. So, as a councilman, it would be nice to know, I have to equate it a little to our fireboat. You know, it was given to us, but all of a sudden there are expenses that go on down the road.
Actually, my husband calls that a free puppy.
A free puppy, yeah, that's a free puppy, all
This
right.
really isn't
It comes
like
with,
that. It comes with all the shots and the food you can purchase.
So as a councilman, if I could just ask to get what the future costs with that, for that system are. would
We'll
be.
send that to you, but they are marginal.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I think that concludes our list for those who signed up for public comment. I don't know if there was anyone else who hasn't signed up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Dr. Ajay, we're at citizens, or superintendent's report.
A few comments, and I'm all set with the comments I wanted to make. Thank you.
All right. So that brings us to the consent agenda. Other than the items that we have already voted on, is there anything to exempt from the consent agenda? Mrs. Clarkin.
4F.
Oh, thank you. Yes, the calendar, okay?
That was 4F also, so.
A G, how about B, excuse me, it would be 4G.
Mr. Jones?
4E, please.
Mr. Cerisi?
If there are no further exemptions at this time, I would motion to approve the non-exempted consent agenda items.
Second. All right. Seeing no further hands, all those in favor of approving the non-exempted consent items, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. All right, that takes care of A, B, C. We've already done D, so it brings us to number E. I believe, Mr. Jones, were you going to exempt this until our next agenda?
Yeah, I would request that this item be tabled to either the next or the meeting on the 28th, so the committee can receive additional information.
While we have, we've reserved the 21st for the budget, I would request that we do this as well on the 21st. I don't think it will be that lengthy an item, and we need to get it done in order to get the program studies to the printer as soon as possible.
Do we need a motion, Kim, or?
Yes, I need a motion to table that item to January 21st.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
I would, excuse me?
I need, you may speak afterwards, but we're taking the vote. So are you an aye or an A, Mr. Mudge? To table the
yes.
item? Okay, thank you. Okay.
But
So motion passes. Mr. Mudge, you would like to say something?
Yeah, what I'd like to see in that program of studies is to, I've gone over that. I would like to clearly understand that each each of the course offerings, whether the courses are mandatory to meet the BEP requirements. I think that's essential to understand that when it comes to our budget at that point in time. And also, do we have an idea of, or could we get an idea of the course offerings that we had this year and the amount of students that participated in the courses, each of the courses?
I believe Dr. Mansouri is going to be giving a presentation, so some of our questions will be answered at that point.
Well, I just, again, I'll
Dr. Auger is taking
look for
notes
that
on what you said,
information.
Mr. Mudge.
Excuse me?
I said Dr. Auger is taking notes on what you were saying.
Yeah, okay, good, thank you.
Anything else? All right, that brings us to item F. And Dr. Auger is passing us down calendars.
Members of the committee, in your packet, I presented to you a proposal for a school calendar. Since that time, I have also notified our teachers' union, actually both unions, support staff as well, about my proposal for the contract change. In that time period between when I put this together in the packet and tonight, there has been some pushback from members of the community about going 2 weeks ahead, or going into the second week ahead of Labor Day.
Right.
I was looking to start with our professional day on the 22nd and start with the kids on Monday, the 25th. I would like to alter that request, and that is what I'm giving to you now, calendar number 2, in which we would start with the professional day on the 25th of August and start with the kids on the Tuesday. We would still be in good shape. As you recall, probably about a year ago now, we approved the idea of including Good Friday as a day of school as well as Jewish holidays, and therefore we have done a lot of work to make sure that we don't go too deeply into June. That's been a concern of ours in the past, particularly with hurricanes and blizzards and such, that we go into that last week of June, and one more major storm might even push us right to the edge of, July, which we cannot go to by law. So I think we're in a comfortable place here, and it still starts us on a Monday and doesn't get too far ahead of Labor Day with this. So I'm happy with this change. And so I would recommend School Calendar 2, which I've just handed to you.
And I see your hand, Mr. Susi. I just want to make sure I'm understanding this right, Dr. Auger, is that this is the calendar that does not take in consideration. This is the religious neutral. We don't.
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Because that was something I know we had talked about, not taking off the religious holidays, only taking off the state holidays.
Right.
Mr. Susi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know there still might be some questions or comments, but at this time, I just wanted to put a motion on the table and offer a motion to approve this revised calendar number 2 that the superintendent has recommended.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Mr. Clerk, Mrs. Clerkin, since you asked this, and then I see Mr. Mudge.
Yeah, actually, Dr. Auger saved us a lot of discussion because he actually implemented what I was going to suggest. So I think this works much better than the first calendar, and I fully support it.
Mr. Mudge.
Yeah, I just got, excuse me. No, go ahead. I just, not a question, but a recommendation here, because it would make things more simple for me and maybe help us in the future, is Dr. Kuchar, could we just circle the days on here with a dark number or something, or that we have the school committee meetings? Because that would kind of tie all this stuff together. We've had some issues before. Yeah. Just be kind of from a note standpoint. So we'd have, both our meeting schedules and everything else kind of on one document.
Yeah, I'm just not sure that for the sake of this particular document that goes primarily to parents and students, that information is needed. There are a lot of items on the overall general school calendar, and they get listed on our webpage calendar, but
Well,
not
again,
necessarily this particular document.
I thought that, them having to see the nights of the school committee meetings on there would be just as helpful, and they have everything in kind of one bag.
We could make them in bright orange, Dr. Ajay, to really invite people to come to our meetings, since we have such the popular turnout.
Be our own color.
Yeah, there you go.
Mr. Jones.
Thank you. I agree with Mrs. Clarkin's comments, so thank you to Dr. Ajay for saying that. I would just note that obviously 2014 has the uniqueness of being an election cycle, so there's obviously 2 days where our facilities are required by the town. I know that we're taking advantage of one of those for professional development. I just lay it out there as a goal, a vision, when this rolls around in 2016, that perhaps we're at the point that even if our facilities need to be used for elections, that we might be able to find ways of educating our students so that we don't have to make it a day off just because we have to fill election requirements. For example, like the blizzard bag technique they use in New Hampshire. So perhaps we'll be advanced at that point where things like elections don't, drive us not to have school.
I believe
that was a state law. I think that's what you're pointing out. That was a requirement of the state.
Right, but I mean,
it wasn't a local North Kingstown decision. It was a state decision.
Oh, then maybe I'm wrong, that we can't, even though we don't have school, not find a way
even if your school is not being used as a polling place.
Oh, well, then I take that back. So
I think the governor's understanding when that was put together was that in most cases, most towns, that you do use at least some of their schools for polling places.
Maybe the commissioner will take her point about being creative and initiative about learning and convince the state to change their mind that just because we have some use of buildings doesn't mean education doesn't have to go on. Thank you for pointing that out, Dr.
Mrs. Ovens.
Were you asking about online? Did you mean online, or did you mean in the building?
Yeah, or
online is one thing,
alternate
but
sites, or also the concept that New Hampshire uses when they know they're going to have a snow day. Or maybe we'll take advantage of, the longer hours and not 180 days. Who knows by that? So, but thank you for clarifying. Thank you, Dr. Jay, for the change.
Yeah, Phil, thank you for the change. I was going to also comment on that being a little on the early side. Hopefully this will resolve people's concerns, having it on the 26th. I don't know. We're not getting any feedback before we're voting on it. That's my only concern. But I would imagine, Phil, that you've already spoken to some people about it already then.
I received 4 emails today from different teachers asking about the calendar that was originally proposed. And when I wrote back to them and said that I knew that Dr. Ajay was going to, because my first step was I said to Dr. Ajay, oh, what are we doing? And then he wrote back and he said he was going to propose a calendar number 2 that started on August 25th. And so when I wrote back to those, not 4 data points, that's it, but they were much more amendable to starting on the 25th than the 22nd.
All right, thank you for that information.
All right, so we have a motion on the table and a second for calendar number 2, which you have in your hands, not in the packet. So all those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries. All right, so we're coming to item number G, and I know that we have talked in executive session about some amendments to G, and so I don't know if there is a motion to make for the amendments to G as spoken about in executive session.
I will offer a motion to approve the changes that we made to the 3 individual contracts. And that is Dr. Michelle Humbert, Assistant Superintendent, Mary King, Director of Administrative Services, and Dr. Patricia Pizzulo, Director of Pupil Personnel Services.
I'll second that motion.
I'd like to amend the motion. I would
Yes,
like
Mr.
to
Mudge.
to be recognized that this is a 3-year contract. These are 3-year contracts, number one. Number two, I would request that we include in here the pay base that goes along with this. This is not merely an addition, extension of a contract. It's a significant pay increase as well. So I think with that, adding those two, then we could vote. So I would like to know, I would have it documented or recorded, what the new pay scales will be for each of these positions at this time.
You need a second for the amendment if it's going to pass, if it's going to go any further.
For the First Amendment?
No. Mr. Mudge just made a second amendment. You need to make a second if you're going to vote on it, or if you don't make a second, it just dies.
Well, I would hope that my colleagues would see the value of, letting our community know what the new pay scales are for these individuals.
If I could just interject, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Carroll, once these contracts, these are draft proposals, and I believe once they're formally written up, then it's public information at that time.
Yes, it is, once those contracts are written up.
So there's not a written contract or document at this time. It was just a proposal or a recommendation the superintendent put forward, and thank you for affirming what I said, that basically once the documents are formally put together, they are a public document.
Well, why don't we wait until they're formally put together before we vote on them? I mean, wouldn't you think that
It's kind of,
it's a catch-22, but the issue is...
The proposal is such that you vote on the proposal and then it gets written up as a contract.
Yeah, but I understand that, Mrs. Page, but, we just went through and we approved teachers' salaries, teachers' contracts, extensions, and so forth. We approved what the increases in pay would be. We mentioned, 0.5% this year, next year, and 1.5% at the end. So I see no reason why we're hesitant to put in what the new salaries for these three individuals are going to be that we're approving.
All right, so I have not received a second on the motion, and so we still have the original motion on the table. At this point, is there any further discussion on the motion?
Are we ashamed to put these numbers out here?
Mr. Mudge, if there's something that you'd like to present to the community or something you'd like to say, by all means, go right ahead.
Yeah, let me go back and read the salaries increases that the new base salaries for these positions. Is that fine? Or indeed, the superintendent can raise, he can indicate what he proposed so that it's recorded here. I would ask the superintendent to do that.
I don't think there's any problem with doing that. Dr. Ajay said he's more than happy to do that.
Sure, thank you.
All right. Okay, the presentation that I...
Point of order. Mayor, I'm sorry, Phil.
Okay.
Do we need a second first to have discussion?
No, well, first of all, you have a motion on the table to accept the contracts as they have been discussed.
Was it seconded? I just missed that.
First one.
Okay, thank you, sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
Wait a minute. Hey, Bob's right. Bill's motion never even received a second.
No, but Bill's motion didn't receive, your motion received a second.
It did.
So we have a
Okay.
motion
Sorry, I
on the
missed
table
that.
with the second. The amendment was not seconded.
Right. So do you want to vote on your
But
motion?
The question for Mayor is this executive session discussion.
No, it's really not. I mean, you discuss job performance in executive session.
Right.
As part of job performance, you discuss ranges as to what you're going to offer.
Right.
Once those contracts are developed, and we couldn't do them tonight yet, they're going to be public documents anyway. So
Right.
everybody's going to know what the salary is. It's not a secret.
Right.
But you're voting on it. Mr. Mudge wants it released, but you have a
We're
motion
voting
and a
on a
second.
number tonight.
Right. Okay, we are. Superintendent can outline why and what.
But just the final, he doesn't have to go with, just the final, what the contracts will be.
Go ahead.
Okay. Tonight, I asked the school committee to increase the salaries of Dr. Humbert, Mrs. King, and Dr. Pizzullo. I did so looking at the fair market value for the types of work that they do and for the superior performance that I have noticed with their job performance over the past 3 years. And this has been consistent with the approach that I've taken with the administrators in our district. and principals as well. What I'm looking for Dr. Humbird, again, to get her to a point of being consistent with fair market value in similar districts in the state, is a salary of $125,000 a year. For Mrs. King, a salary of $120,000 a year, and for Dr. Pizzullo, $114,444 a year. I believe that will be for year one. Years 2 and 3 will be to be determined, again, based on similar practices that we've had over the past year or two with our administrators.
All right.
Thank you.
Mr. Cerisi.
Just to clarify, Dr. Roger, for the public, when you say similar practices, the years 2 and 3, any recommended pay increases, years 2 and 3 of the individual contracts, any recommended pay increases would be from you and would be based off of their evaluations?
Exactly.
Their individual evaluations. Yes. And these 3 contracts are set to expire on June 30th, so these, what's before us tonight, if the committee so chooses to approve, goes into effect July 1st.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I have one clarification
Mrs.
point.
Avanzato? In a moment, Mr. Mudge.
Mr. Mudge can go first.
Okay, Mr. Mudge.
I would just like to note that these are 3-year contracts, but we're not obligated to award 3-year contracts. And I'm going to be voting against that because I'm not inclined to award 3-year contracts at this point in time.
All right. Mrs. Avanzato?
Yes, I just want to say very briefly that I think we are very fortunate in these 3 administrators that are in front of us tonight. And as a committee in discussion, information was provided to the committee of ranges in the surrounding districts and challenges that each of these individuals have faced, taken on, and accomplished for the district. So we received a lot of information on this and went through it very thoroughly. So I just wanted to make that clear for the record and thank these 3 employees who I think are real leaders in our district. So thank you.
Very nicely said, Mrs. Avanzato. Thank you for adding that. Is there any other comments?
I just, really quick, again, thank them for their service and commitment to the district, and thank you to Dr. Roger for providing the committee with all the backup information on his recommendation to the committee and the work that's been put in on these to, find a comfort zone for all those involved. So, thank you.
I do believe it's always uncomfortable when you have to speak in public about employees, but I believe that we have the employees we have in front of us here are some of the top 3 employees in this state, and I'm not afraid to say that. So I really thank you for all that you do for North Kingstown and the services that you provide us.
Dr. Roger, she didn't say that when we approved your contract. I just wanted to...
Yeah, I'm just wondering if the 3 included me or Dr. Pizzullo, who's not here, but I'll take it anyway. Thank you.
Lorraine, could we have a roll call vote?
Larry Cerisi.
Yes.
Carol Clarkin.
Yes.
Robert Jones.
Yes.
William Mudge.
No.
Kimberly Page.
Yes.
Linda Avanzato.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-1. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of the consent agenda, and it brings us...
Madam Chair, could
Oh,
we
yes.
seal the minutes? We have to go back.
Oh, thank you very much for pointing that out, Mrs. Berglund. Do I have a motion to seal the to seal the minutes from today's executive session?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
No.
Motion carries 5-1. All right, now that comes to the unfinished business. And the first item on the unfinished business is our discussion of 2014-2015 staffing.
I'd just like to begin the discussion by saying that I emailed some ideas about, we've had kind of an ongoing discussion about staffing, and in the past I provided you with some enrollment numbers for the course this is something, Bill, you'd asked for earlier tonight. That was already provided to you in your staffing, the actual courses that are running and the number of students that are in them. Partially based on my study of those items and discussions with, the needs around the district with our administrative team, I have provided another email to you over the weekend to give you an indication of the kinds of things I have on my mind in terms of approaching our next budget season. I appreciate, I've already gotten a lot of feedback from a number of you, and I'm getting a sense of, what your thinking is on some of these issues, and that's going to help me to get a sense of, okay, what will the committee, what direction you will want to go. So that's been very valuable to me, and it gives me an opportunity to talk to you about the kinds of things that I see needs to be addressed. I firmly get it from all of you that there is, we're trying to do the best we can in the most efficient way possible and try to not increase staff if it is not needed. And I get that, and I think you can see from the data that I've already given to you that there are a number of areas that I'm looking to cut back on a little bit, and a number of areas that I would look to add a little bit. And I think that's just a regular year-to-year kind of adjustment kind of thing. But I think we're pretty close to a spot where we would be kind of neutral in that category in terms of adding or subtracting staff. So I appreciate the input that you've given so far.
Further questions or things that any of the committee members would like to bring up? Right, Mrs. Avanzato.
Just that I know this is the very beginning of this conversation.
Right,
so,
right. And even based on the conversations I already had and the document that you're going to get very soon about my budget proposal will reflect some of the things you've already seen and some of the conversations that we've already had. So,
for all your work, Phil.
thank you.
I'm sorry, Phil, Dr. Rizzi, this is just a proposal at this time or just informational at this time?
This is just informational. It's an ongoing discussion that we had from back at the Stony Lane meeting where
Right.
I presented you with some staffing information.
Thank you.
Mr. Mudge, I saw your hand up.
Yes. I would like to, I noticed we had some staffing for preschool.
Yes.
Crossing there. I'd like to get a little more information on that. I'm concerned in terms of who's eligible, for preschool. I was under the opinion that the preschool was basically based on, testing the children. I could be wrong. That requires them to get this additional help before they start kindergarten. And I noticed, and the reason I'm saying this is that I noticed that the City of Providence wants to have preschool for all their kids, which is going to be quite expensive. But I find it ironic with Providence wanting, preschool for all their children, and yet it's not a state law to have a kindergarten for all children, full-day kindergarten. So how do we address that issue and bring those two together? And again, I would ask to get some clarity on our obligation, our legal obligation to provide both pre-K and kindergarten programs. Now, I separate that from needs and wants. In other words, the state may say, we need this, okay, and we have to meet that. But then we may be more generous and want to do more for our children. In that case, I would like to know, what flexibility we have, and that will certainly go a long way in terms of, the overall budget and what the impact of the budget would be. Because certainly, just my numbers looking at this, if we would have to put full-day kindergarten in, I think, Dr. Ogier, the numbers were like $500,000 it would cost, $600,000.
I can address some of these points.
And if we did something similar to pre-K, pre-K, you're talking $1 million between pre-K and kindergarten that we could be, looking at as an expenditure.
You're right. The pre-K, there is a mandate from the state to provide public education for pre-K students who have special needs. That is a mandate, and that affects all of us. But however, there is not, and you hear more and more talk, even from the federal government on down. You hear about it in Providence, and people wanting to move to mandatory pre-K. The commissioner has said that she is not happy with the fact that Rhode Island, she was surprised when she came here, in fact, that Rhode Island does not have mandatory kindergarten, all-day K. That is something she has mentioned she would like to address at some point. But I think there's a realization around communities in the state. Some of them have gone. I think the statistics I gave you last year when I talked about this in some detail is that about half of the districts in the state have full-day K. We're one of them that does not. And at the time I gave you a price tag, the staffing that would be needed would be roughly $600,000 to do full-day K. And we would probably run into a room issue at schools like Forest Park and Fishing Cove at this point. So we might have to add a trailer or something like that for a classroom at those schools if we were to go in that direction. So it's a major issue. It's actually something that I would like to do. I believe in it, but I do understand the fiscal constraints. And here we are at budget time, and $600,000 can be used for a lot of things. And we have to make our priority list. But in terms of the staffing needs with preschool, there are some changes in the way we have to organize this. The time in learning for preschool students has expanded a little bit. We were able to do this with kind of like a 4-day schedule, and the teachers on Friday would have professional development and common planning time. That, because of the expanded time in learning for students, it's going to mirror more closely a half-day K program that we currently have. So what we're looking to do is to build in those additional teachers that are needed for an elementary student who would have PE and would have music and would have some electives, if you call them that. And part of that is to give those kids those experiences at their appropriate level. But the other part is also to allow their primary teachers the time that is needed to have their own professional development and common planning time on a regular basis, like we do for all of the other teachers in the district. So that is kind of a minimal piece. We're looking at a few .2 teachers here and there. I'm looking for ways to find that within what we're already doing, so perhaps we don't have to even spend that money, but I need a little time to figure that out, and hopefully, by the time we're not too far along in the budget process, I can clarify, here's what we're capable of and what we're not capable of in that regard. Another piece that I'm proposing, that I will be proposing, is grant funded through the IDEA grant overseen by Dr. Bizzullo, and that is to have a preschool coordinator. Right now, we do some outsourcing of having someone that we call a manager come in and lead LEA-type meetings or IEP meetings where they act as the local agent for the district. At this level, believe it or not, there are hundreds of them. There are approximately 400 of these meetings every year. So there's a lot to oversee just at the preschool. We're talking about roughly 75 students. So it's quite a bit, and there's a number of staff involved. And so, the differences in the staffing of this are minimal right now that I'm projecting, and primarily paid for through the IDEA grant, not the operational budget. So that's where we are right now. I'll probably have a lot more to say on that as we go through the budget process.
Dr. Jay, I just want to clarify, when I talked to you about the preschool, you said that was something that was being mandated
Yes.
by us. So it's not something that you thought it was a nice to have, but
Right.
it was something that we were being required to have by the.
Exactly, yes.
The number of hours per week is increasing to 13.75. So that's
But-
mandated. That's why those .2s can't be covered by the teachers anymore.
But is it, am I correct then, that the kindergarten is not necessarily associated with, apparently, if you're going to pre-K, it's kind of like an IEP. I mean, you have a
Well, we have to continue to provide services for special education students through
Right.
kindergarten.
And they start, yeah, okay.
But not necessarily a full-day experience.
Right, but pre-K basically is for the special ed students.
There's actually a requirement that we do the best we can to have the classes be at least 51% regular ed. And we invite people from the community, kids from the community and their parents to have their kids enroll, but it's not something we can force anybody to do. And we typically don't necessarily get to that 51%. But on a tuition basis, we do have regular ed students in those rooms as well.
Oh, so we collect the tuition for those?
We do collect a tuition. I'm not sure what the number is. I can get that for you.
Very small amount of money per year. It's less than $15,000 per year.
Thank you. One final question is, could these even the pre-K and the, probably teachers will shoot me, the pre-K and the K classes, could they be kind of implemented through Montessori schools, like charter schools and things like that? Could we outsource those? I'm not sure. I'm asking maybe a dumb question, okay. But is that possible?
I don't
Like
believe.
private kindergartens and things like that?
I believe through the contract we just signed with the NEANK that they would have a problem with that. I'm assuming, Mr. Dubois. So,
Well, I understand, but
yeah.
I'm just asking from a, you know, if it wasn't a contractual problem now, that, is it something that we're apparently locked into? Again, I have a problem with the funding of the charter schools, okay, and I think the money should stay in town. That's a big, big bump on us, okay? So I don't think I'm picking on the teachers, okay?
If you don't have laws and contracts, then I guess just about anything is possible, so.
Well, yeah, so we need to start working on some of the laws, especially with the charter schools. And that costing us $600,000-700,000 a year.
Mr. Jones.
Mayor, I just wonder if you could follow up on your comment on the increase from, so it's an increase in the number of hours to 13.75? Is it an
Yes.
increase in the composition? Like, do we have to provide art and music, or just we have to provide more hours?
Well, yes, you do. And what's happening right now is that in those 4 days that Dr. Ajay referenced, the art and the music piece is getting covered because the number of hours can be covered by the teachers that we have. So he had noted that there are 4 days of the pre-K and 1 day of providing for those teachers, because they are regular teachers, their common planning time and their PD. This 13.75 increase will make that not possible now. So those electives that are adding in, they're already getting, those children are already getting those electives, but they're being covered by that one teacher that we can't now provide common planning time to if we don't add the .2s.
Okay, but the subject is being provided by the current crop of teachers. So there's not like a pre-K art teacher we need. We just need.
We need the coverage in the time so that that teacher has their common planning time and their PD time.
Okay, but it's not a specialized credential for those. Okay, that's the first thing. Second thing, not just a question, I know we're going to go in more detail, so I want to elaborate. It's more for, the community who, of course, is not here when we get to this time in the meeting. But, obviously, people are our greatest asset. They're our biggest costs that go hand in hand. And looking, in the future, our infrastructure needs, I think we have to start, bringing the community up to speed that a lot of stuff that we consider nice, and I'm not differentiating between needs and wants. It's more of obviously wanting to give students a lot of flexibility, wanting students to have the opportunity to change when they can, wanting students to have a very large breadth of topics, especially at the high school, to do. The realities are that the more marginal you do that, the more expensive it gets, and you really have to start looking at the cost-benefit analysis, of the degree that of what we're offering versus these other competing needs we have. And I think just the community has to come to the realization that those are really, when you get down to it, the kind of issues that we'll be looking at, and that the superintendent and the staff will be looking at, and that there's just a reality to having small classes, a reality to having a certain number of electives and a lot of different stuff, and that at some point, till we pedagogically change some stuff, until we change sort of the model we have, those things run into conflict at a certain point. And I think the community also needs to know that, our infrastructure needs, we have a few of our buildings are getting up there. They're 40, 50 years old. We got one that's 80 years old. We either have a commitment to pour a lot of money into them or a commitment to look at what our future needs will be and start moving our educational system to meet future needs and not Band-Aiding current infrastructure. So I just sort of lay that out there as the realities we're going to have to deal with, and working with the town and our community members to sort of get that vision and move things there instead of trying to find these Band-Aids every year, whether it's staffing, whether it's deferred maintenance, whether it's something else in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. All right. Not seeing any further hands up. That moves us to policies. We have two policies on our agenda here tonight. The first one is the BEAR, which is our annual schedule of school committee meetings. By policy, we have to have our first meeting of the year. We have to publish the meetings for the next calendar year. So if there's no questions, I'd be asking for a motion to approve that.
Second.
Mr. Jones.
Thank you. Just real quick, I want to commend, I know the committee and Dr. Zay, we made an effort this year to hold some meetings at different schools. I'm hoping that we can continue that trend over the current year, so the committee gets exposed and gets a chance for the constituents who are primarily at that school to show us the school and the other stuff. So I commend that, and I also say that obviously we have to have the schedule. There'll have to be some thinking about how a committee of five, though, approaches this starting January 2015. So not a discussion for now, but just throwing it out there.
Thank you. Okay, there's a motion on the table in a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. The next policy is GCF-GDF. It's pre-employment physicals, and this was changed by after our insurer, the trust, took a look at it and sent Mrs. King some information as to who needed pre-employment physicals and who did not. What this does is this policy makes it considerably less the number of people who are getting pre-employment physicals. So that was the reason for the amendment after speaking to the trust and going under their guidance, and that was the reason for the changes. So. Yes, Mrs. Avanzado.
Appropriate time to offer a motion?
Yes.
Okay. I offer a motion to approve.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. All right, that brings us to the end of our agenda. If there's no other issues, then I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
I have an issue on the reports and correspondence. I would like to submit, please pass that down to the secretary. I'd like to submit this analysis I've done on the bid, $6.4 million bid. The council awarded this contract. If my analysis is correct, we wasted between $700,000 and $1 million. And I think we need to look into that, and I am going to ask the council to look into that, and I think we should have a discussion about that.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, everyone.